It's my pleasure to introduce John Hinshaw, who is the Group Chief Operating Officer of HSBC, with us today for the keynote event of our International Fintech Festival. John, thank you so much for joining us today. And in your background, there's this fabulous depth of experience of sitting on boards and having senior executive positions across multiple industries, including with the likes of Verizon, Boeing, and Hewlett-Packard. And now with the HSBC, we'd be delighted to hear your sort of experiences and perspectives across multiple industries, how that has impacted your perspectives around delivering technology and operations in the digital space across the global bank at HSBC.
Well, thank you, Stella, and thanks for having me today, and thanks to Clifford Chance. And also thank you for all the work you do for us at HSBC. You're a great partner, and we have so many interesting things to work together on. But to your question, it's been a fun journey through many different industries, as you said, from telecommunications to aerospace and defense to technology, and now financial services. And I think, every industry, first and foremost, has customers that are the most important part. The reason businesses exist is for their customers, and regardless of the industry, that's important. And so you look at financial services and of every size and shape, from individuals all the way up to the governments of the world and everything in between. And really helping our customers have a better experience is what it's all about. And that was true in every industry that I've worked in. I think the other thing that's very true is technology is the foundation of the business and how it runs every day. If you think about the trillions of transactions that HSBC processes every day through our technology environment, and customers' primary interaction these days with the bank is a technology interaction on their phone, on their computer, with an ATM, whatever it may be. And that was true again with every industry, that technology is the foundation there. And then I think as you look to the future, technology will also create innovation, disruption, and opportunity in every industry. And that is accelerating now with AI and quantum and a lot of the other technologies that are out there. So never a dull moment, as we say, a lot to do, a lot of fun. And it's great to have a chance to chat with you today about it.
Yeah, and we're super excited to be having this discussion with you here today. And just sort of diving a bit more deeply into the emerging technologies that we're seeing. I mean, you have been reported to say that you think financial services is the prime use case for artificial intelligence. Yeah. It would be great just to hear a little bit more about what you and the bank are doing in the artificial intelligence space.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Stella. And the reason I said that is if you think about financial services, we have more data than almost any other industry. Those trillions of transactions I referenced, all of our customer transactions, all of the financial transactions that happen around the world, from stock trading to bond trading to derivatives, et cetera, all of that information and data we have, and how we process that is critically important to give our customers a great experience. Therefore, AI, which is only helpful if it has the right data, is critical for our bank and gives us tremendous opportunity to take a look at all that data and then help our customers in their financial lives. And we've been using AI for over a decade at HSBC. It's not, everybody, it sort of feels in the world like it's new and a brand new technology. And certainly Gen AI is the next level. Yes. But we've used AI, for example, several years ago, we created an AI algorithm to predict when our cash machines needed to be refilled around the world. Now, you might think, well, wait a minute, are cash machines smart enough to tell somebody that they need to be refilled? Well, the new ones are, but the older ones that have been around for a while, they didn't have that. And so we would do a sort of weekly replenish, and half the time we'd show up and the ATM would be empty, and the other half we'd show up and it would be full because of customers' particular behavior that week. But with the AI algorithms, we knew exactly when those cash machines needed to be refilled, and we're able to make sure the customers always had money, but also visit them less frequently, which is very helpful. And as we get into some of the newer AI capabilities, prompting our traders as they're working with our customers, and as the AI can look across the marketplace and sort of show opportunities where Maybe a particular customer needs to hedge their portfolio. Maybe a particular customer is heavy in one currency, needs to think about another currency. And the AI can look at that and then prompt the trader to say, hey, I think we should think about this, without that trader having to spend all day pouring through all these different things. So it's tons of opportunities, more to come.
So impactful and super exciting. And on top of that, how about other emerging tech, such as quantum computing, for example? What are your thoughts around that? And is the bank looking at that?
The quantum computers themselves, the hardware, we have a partnership with IBM, and we are, as they get better, closely with them to take advantage of it. But even then, we figured out with IBM and others how the software will work once the quantum computer is there. And so we're starting to run algorithms on those quantum computers. And I think cyber both is an opportunity and a risk in quantum, because I'm sure a lot of folks have seen the press that quantum will have such computing power that it can crack some of these traditional encryption algorithms and such that protect a lot of information today, passwords, identification, other cyber protections. At the same time, we think quantum can help us create a new level of encryption and also outsmart the criminals as they try to use the technology as well. And it is this very interesting balance, especially in cyber, of new risks form with technology, but then new capabilities to prevent and block those risks form as well.
And then just switching to a very different type of emerging tech and the world of digital assets, digital money, and blockchain. It'd be great to hear your sort of views and what the bank's doing around that, strategies around that.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area, especially in digital assets. A lot of the buzz has been around cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, et cetera. And that's certainly a fascinating space. And many of our customers are involved in that. We're always very careful and thoughtful how we address that, because there is a bit of risk in that asset class and volatility that we want to be careful with. But I think for us, even more importantly, is the central bank digital currencies that are emerging. China's certainly been on the forefront of that. And we've been working with them, working with the Hong Kong market on the digital Hong Kong dollar, the digital yuan in China, and then with 16 other governments around the world as they think about that digital currency. That will be, I think, a revolutionary way for customers to transact, to work with the government, whether it be in day-to-day transactional services, if the government needs to create some subsidies for an economy, like we saw during COVID. It's a perfect way to do it. It's also much better at preventing money laundering and other fraud capabilities with that digital currency. Expanding beyond that into digital assets. So we were really the first bank in the world at scale to produce a digital bond offering. We worked with the Hong Kong government over the last several years. And then just 2 weeks ago, we issued this digital bond and we were oversubscribed. We had over 50 companies interested in that. And it's just the start of how all of these, what were traditionally more manual transactions, become fully digitized. And the great thing about that digital bond is, as it gets resold in the marketplace, it's tokenized. We can track it. It's very clear where it's been, who's owned it, and it's a much less manually intensive process.
Yes, I mean, it's transformative, and it must be so fascinating for the bank to be in so many different markets, to have these perspectives of what the different regulators are doing, the different governments, and to play a significant role in that.
It is. It's one of the most fun things of working at HSBC is we are in the middle. At one point, the term was we're somehow connected to 95% of the world's GDP in some form or fashion every day. And it's East and it's West and it's everything in between. And that's HSBC's slogan is opening up a world of opportunity. And we're uniquely positioned to do that because of our presence around the world. And it's not a new presence. We've been in these markets for, in some cases, hundreds of years. Yes. In many cases, since none others. And so, countries value and trust that long-term experience there. We're not a brand new entrant that then disappears in a couple of years. We've been committed for a long time in those markets, and it really makes a difference in their trust of how we operate.
Of course. And what I also find fascinating, I'm based in Singapore, is just how open the regulators are across Asia to experimenting and innovating and testing these new technologies. And so it's really been fascinating to witness that dynamic with the bank and the regulators and these use cases coming out, particularly in the digital asset space.
Absolutely. You reference the regulators, and you were there in Singapore, and the MAS, the Monetary Authority of Singapore. I've met with them while I was in Singapore. They've come to visit here in London. They're a terrific partner in this whole digital journey and where we're headed, whether that's payments, whether that's digital assets. They are a very innovative, thoughtful regulatory agency that we enjoy partnering with. And I think that's now becoming true around the world as well. And that regulation is not just don't do this, don't do that. Regulation is, hey, here's how we're going to think about some of these new technologies. Here's how we're going to enable it to happen through whether it's payment rails or standards around AI. But it's a very collaborative discussion, which I think is quite helpful.
Absolutely. And I also find, having been practicing technology law for 20 plus years, bringing that experience of running technology platforms in different industries to these very new, highly emerging technology platforms becomes very relevant. So I would imagine that your experience with Hewlett-Packard and Verizon, pulling that all together in this very new emerging space, must be so invaluable to sort of draw on as the bank is working through these issues across multiple markets.
Yeah, you make a very thoughtful point, because, look, financial services is an amazing industry, and it is how the world functions on a daily basis. It also interacts with a lot of these other industries and other technologies. You mentioned Verizon. Certainly, the world now runs on telecommunications networks, whether they be wireless, fiber, broadband, satellite, et cetera. We couldn't be having this conversation today. We couldn't do many of the things we do every day without that foundational technology, and from 5G and beyond, and where that goes. So I think understanding how these technologies come together. HP is another example of, taking what was a data center business, then becoming more of a cloud-based business, how those two integrate together, the network elements of that, how cyber plays into that whole space is so important. So yeah, it's good fun to see how these different industries come together.
And then just sort of pivoting the discussion a little bit to the use of artificial intelligence and the sort of ethical issues that come around that. It'd be fascinating to hear how the bank is looking at some of these risks and challenges using artificial intelligence in spite of all the great benefits that it brings. How do you sort of navigate that new evolving risk landscape?
Well, it's perfect timing, because I presented this to our board last week.
Okay.
And we've created what we call an AIRCO. There's an acronym for everything, right? AIRCO is the Artificial Intelligence Review Committee.
Right.
And so any new use case before it goes into production at HSBC goes through this AIRCO for review. And the AIRCO is comprised of technology executives, operational executives, risk executives, legal executives. In fact, it's chaired by my chief legal counsel, Steve Albrecht. Now, it's certainly good to have a chair with a legal background, but Steve's a real unique individual in that he also has written a book on artificial intelligence. And I'm going to give it a little plug today. It's called Future Proof.
Right.
And he wrote it about what AI would look like in 2053. He wrote it last year. So 30 years out, what would AI look like? And I read it on one of my long flights, and I thought, this guy actually understands both the opportunities of AI, but equally important, the risks of AI if it goes wrong. And for us at HSBC, the way we approach it, especially with Gen AI, is being sure there is a human in the loop, that it's not just Gen AI creating an outcome for customers that's then delivered directly to them without any intervention. It's creating outcomes that an employee of HSBC reviews. It helps them do their job better, but the interaction is still reviewed, and actually the engagement with the customer still comes from a human being, not just, from pure Gen AI. And I think, at least in the short run, that's really important. I mean, everybody talks about hallucinations and bias and all these things of AI, which are very true today. Even if you go into most Gen AI engines and type in your name or my name, it isn't exactly right. In fact, it has me in a different company at some point. It has me as both a U.S. executive and a British national, which unfortunately I'm not. I love the UK, but I'm an American citizen. So it's not perfect yet, and it won't be for a long time, maybe ever. And having that human in the loop is really important. The other thing we do on this AirCo is we make sure that the models that are set up that process the AI are very thoughtfully put together, and they're very thoughtfully done to not have any bias in there, especially for our vulnerable customers and others who may not be able to interact with technology as much. It's really important that these models take care of them as well.
And how do you help ensure that there is that sort of diverse perspective and address the risk of bias in the models?
I think you have to look at the outcomes. And again, you need experts who understand long before the AI exists how these things are supposed to work. And then they can pattern match. I'll give you some examples. So as we look at the ESG world, and especially in what industries we finance, helping companies transition from more of a traditional carbon heavy industry to a carbon free industry. We provide the financing to help them get there. And then we communicate that. And as we sort of look at a customer and try to figure out their carbon footprint, sometimes they'll disclose it to us. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes we'll get estimated data. Sometimes we'll run an AI algorithm to say, hey, what does the AI think that the carbon footprint is? But then we have an expert actually look at that and say, okay, that's what the AI said. That's what public information says. But let's have a real thoughtful understanding of what that is, and not just take the number that comes back. And so I do think that human expert in the loop is really important and critical. And if anything, it helps us think about the workforce of the future as well, right? Because people think, oh, is AI going to replace everybody? Well, no. In fact, every technology that's ever existed, it may have replaced certain functions and roles, but it also opened up new opportunities, new skill sets, new ways of working. And I think that will definitely be the case in the future, and that the AI will give us information, and then we have to figure out what to do with it and how to process it and how to communicate it effectively. And those skill sets will be different than some of the skill sets that exist today.
And it's sort of interesting how the use of AI is quite different from other technologies, because it is, to your point, that the criticality of having that human in the loop, that sort of partnership with the technology to reach the best outcomes as a result of using the tech. I'd just like to then move the discussion on to ESG and talk about how technology is enabling the bank to help support financial inclusion across your customer base and markets.
It's very important for us. We have a wide range of customers, and we think very carefully and thoughtfully about customers who maybe are vulnerable in some form or fashion. It could be, their personal situation. It could be their stage of life. It could be lots of different things where maybe our standard offering isn't as helpful to them as it would be for other customers. A good example would be in our Hong Kong business, we have a separate app for more vulnerable customers, and it allows them to navigate and bank with us in a much simpler, easy, straightforward way, and the things that they need to do most versus, maybe a different generation customer who wants to do much more digitally and wants a more feature-rich app. And so having two different versions, one for mainstream, one for more vulnerable customers, I think is one way we're doing that. We also are being very thoughtful about, as customers want to interact with us, giving them lots of options. They may want to do it on a mobile device, a computer. We still have branches around the world, and we still encourage our customers to come into branches if that's how they'd like to bank with us. And we want to provide great service for them there as well. If they want to call us and talk to us, we have those capabilities as well. And we want to make sure that the folks in the call centers who are talking to customers, that they have the best information possible, the history of that customer, that the customer is vulnerable, that they might need a little extra help. The other thing we do worry about is a lot of our vulnerable customers are unfortunately targets and sometimes victims of fraud. And we want to be sure that if they come to us and say, hey, I got a phone call and this person wants me to withdraw some money and give it to them, that we're educated to really ask them the right questions and be thoughtful about, okay, well, who is this individual? Are they reputable? Would you mind if we check into that account and see, that it's a valid account and it's not going to be fraudulent? And I think that's another service for vulnerable customers that's really important, because unfortunately there are a lot of folks that are preying on vulnerable customers today and trying to, use their trust and openness. And I think it's our responsibility to help them in that situation.
Yes. And just the impact of that, to be able to provide that support for
That's right.
the vulnerable part of the customer base.
I was actually yesterday chatting with my 82-year-old mother, who is trying to understand her financials a little bit better. And I do very much worry, in her case. And so I said, hey, next time I'm in town, let's go through all of this and just be sure that, we understand what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, how the accounts are organized, et cetera. Yeah.
And then just a sort of final question around fostering innovation and experimentation at the bank. How do you go about driving that sort of passion for innovation that you have across the network at HSBC?
So when I arrived at the bank a little over 4 years ago, we created a brand new function that didn't exist before at a group level. There were pockets around the bank of innovation, but there was not a group innovation function. It's a direct report to me.
Right.
It runs innovation, our venture portfolio, and all of our digital partnerships. And the leader of that is tasked with looking at all the innovations we've talked about, AI, quantum, digital assets. Secondly, we've got about an $800 million venture fund that they run, and they look for companies that we can invest in that can also provide capabilities back to HSBC. And then third, partnering with the likes of Google, Amazon, Microsoft, other large technology firms, and how we leverage their capabilities. So that function brings a lot of new and interesting innovations, both that we're working with, but also working closely with the fintechs that are out there and being sure that we understand how the marketplace is evolving. Just this morning, I was on the phone with a leading fintech innovator discussing some of their capabilities and how we might use those at the bank.